Everyone, welcome. Happy Pride. I'm Beth Dreher, Executive Editor of Good Housekeeping, and I am thrilled to introduce our guests of honor, Dr. Brent Ridge and Josh Kilmer-Purcell, founders of Beekman 1802, the world's largest goat milk-based skincare company and authors of a new book, Goat Wisdom. Beekman has seen incredible growth and success over the years. Recently, the brand was awarded a 2025 Cosmopolitan Holy Grail Beauty Award, a Women's Health Beauty Award, an Oprah Daily Bath Award, not to mention a 2023 Good Housekeeping Beauty Award. But one of the things that makes this company's rise so impressive and interesting is that it comes from humble beginnings. In the midst of the 2008 recession, Brent and Josh, who were married, I think, both lost their jobs and they were at risk of losing the upstate New York farm where the company was founded. But rather than walk away, they committed to building a business from scratch, using goat milk from a local farmer to create soap. With no funding and little experience, they taught themselves e-commerce, branding, and fulfillment, growing Beekman 1802 into a thriving, values-driven company. Their success was rooted not in trends or in investor money, but in timeless principles like perseverance, resourcefulness, community support, and most importantly, kindness. Their new book is a guide for entrepreneurs and leaders who want to build a lasting, meaningful business by returning to what's real. Please join me in welcoming Brent and Josh, along with Victor Mays, the creative director of VERANDA.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
So as the chair of Hearst Pride, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to one of our first Pride events of Pride Month. And it is also our second event this year that we have co-hosted along with the Hearst Next Gen Network. So we are very excited to be partnering again. They say that you shouldn't meet your heroes or the people that you admire because they usually disappoint you. And I have found the opposite to be true in the case of these two gentlemen. Although we only really met a few months ago, they have been on my radar for the better part of 2 decades now, which is kind of crazy. So just a quick background, Josh first became familiar with him with a book that he wrote in 2006. It was a New York Times bestseller called I Am Not Myself These Days. And it is one of the funniest and also most heartbreaking books about his experience in a former life as a drag queen in downtown New York. So definitely recommend reading that. And then Brent, like many people, you know, people in magazines love Martha Stewart. I had always been obsessed with her. And Brent, I first came across when he was VP of Healthy Living at Martha Stewart Living Omnimedia. And he used to be Dr. Brent on her talk show and really was, you know, just this lovely personality that was also a physician and has his MBA. So these guys know their stuff. But let's talk about what Beth sort of alluded to. So when they started the company Beekman 1802, they always say that it started with an original act of kindness. So can you tell us a little bit, and I know you've written a whole other memoir about this, but a little bit about the starting of the business based on your decision to take in Farmer John and his herd of goats?
Absolutely. First of all, I love the introductions where Brent is always like a doctor, an MBA, that had a much, and I'm like, oh, well, that's a drag queen.
He was also a high-level advertising executive before the age of 40, like,
and New York Times bestselling author.
Oh, no,
you got that in.
I think the drag queen trumped all of that. Sure.
Grit. That was good.
But so the way we started was, you know, as you mentioned, first of all, thank you so much for having us here today.
And all the magazines, because
Yes.
from day one, Hearst has been so incredibly supportive of Beekman 1802 from when we had nothing. So
Yes.
we really appreciate Hearst.
Growing our company. So we were 2 New York City professional guys, professional gays, and we, in 2006, I always say we were the typical Manhattan gay couple. Every fall, we would like put on our very best plaids and rent a car and drive to upstate New York and bother local people and pick apples. They
Obnoxious.
Yes, we would go get pumpkins, you know, out in the field, but we didn't realize they just bought the pumpkins wholesale, put them in the field for city people to go.
Why are there no vines on these pumpkins?
So we were doing that in 2006, and we came across this little town called Sharon Springs, a hotel in that town owned by a gay couple. And we stayed there, and on our way out of town, we found a farm that we fell in love with. It was for sale. We cashed in everything we owned. We bought it. 2 years later, 2008, we both lost our jobs in the big recession within 30 days of each other. Brent got his pink slip from Martha Stewart, beautiful penmanship. And my agency folded. It was a terrible time. And we had gotten a letter in our mailbox from a neighbor, Farmer John, who had 80 goats, and he was losing his farm and he had nowhere to bring them. So he asked, can you bring yours? And we said, sure. So we were broke. We had 80 goats. We literally Googled, what can you make with goat milk? And soap was the first thing that came up.
And we say to this day that taking Farmer John in was the original act of kindness that started our company, and it's why it's been so central to the DNA of Beekman 1802 ever since.
So, hey, you have the farm, you've got the goats, you decide you're going to start making your soap. So the first bar of soap was made in 2008. That was sort of like the rough beginning of the company. And then a few years later, Josh published a memoir as they were starting the company called The Bucolic Plague, How Two Manhattanites Became Gentlemen Farmers. And I would say after that published, sort of a media blitz began in terms of over the next 5 years, they did, I've got to get this all down, they were the first gay couple to be the stars of their own reality show, The Fabulous Beekman Boys, which was on Planet Green and the Cooking Channel. They competed in and won The Amazing Race. They published several cookbooks. They published a book on style with country living, I believe. And then throughout all of this, they were featured in so many magazines, from the Women's Health and Cosmopolitan and Good Housekeeping to their entire home being shown in Country Living, and even articles about philanthropy in Town and Country. So this is my question. How did you working in advertising and then you having worked for Martha Stewart sort of influence the way that you really leaned into using the media to promote and launch your brand?
Well, I think we realized early on, our media backgrounds helped us realize early on, we were doing content before content was even a word. We knew that content was marketing. And at the time, content was media. Like, that was the only way you could get content out in the world was through media. So all of the work we did, from the TV show to even The Amazing Race, we looked at it as marketing. We didn't look at it as like, oh my God, we're going to be reality TV stars, or, we certainly never thought we would win The Amazing Race, but we looked at each one of those. How can this impact our business? And I still remember every time we got a magazine article, we would redo our homepage and say, welcome Country Living readers, welcome Martha Stewart readers. So we recognize that symbiotic relationship, that free marketing for us, hopefully good content for you guys, and how that can actually work. And that's what grew our business. We never spent $1 on marketing probably until 2018, 19.
And you even had your own magazine at one point, the Beekman 1802 Almanac. These are magazine guys. They're
really hard work. I don't recommend it. It's super tough. Yeah.
But it was beautiful, and it was really it was a quarterly, and just
fun.
With the farm, it was beautifully done in terms of the seasons, and really nice. So the other thing I would say in terms of the media is that we, as the magazines of Hearst, are always trying to figure out how we can sort of insert ourselves into, or sort of have something to say about the different things that are going on in the world, whether that's like covering the Met Gala or doing a Hollywood issue during award season. I think that you have done a brilliant job of doing that, but also authentically having your products be associated with some great media outlets. So for instance, I don't know if we have any Schitt's Creek fans, but you did a brilliant collaboration where you kind of turned your entire store into Rose Apothecary and did a whole line of products, which it's not unauthentic to what you guys were already doing living in a small town. And then also, even more recently, they were the official US prestige beauty brand for the Wicked movie. So I mean, you need to go online and look at the Instagram videos because there are some lovely lean-ins where they've dressed in their
Mayor of the
Wizard of Oz,
Munchkins.
their Munchkin Land finest to do some fun videos. So how did those partnerships, which felt very authentic, kind of come about?
Well, they all come out of love. Just as Josh was talking about with magazines, we love magazines. So working with, all of the magazines was always just something that we loved because we admired the work so much. And whenever we're doing collaborations, we always try to look at something that we feel we're adding to them with our story, and vice versa. Obviously, they're adding something to us. And with Schitt's Creek, we were big fans of Schitt's Creek when it was still on a very tiny network called Pop TV. And, we just fell immediately in love with it. One, because we had always loved Eugene Levy. And then also
because they basically stole our story.
it was our story. And so they had just announced that they were going to do one final year, like a 5th season. And so I reached out to them and said, you know what? We love your show. Like, we just want to do anything that we can to raise the profile of your show so that more people will experience it.
It was nobody had heard of it.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. And so, we signed the deal to do this collaboration with them. And lo and behold, the pandemic set in. The show was picked up by Netflix, and the season 5 was on Netflix, and it just exploded right at the time that the collaboration was happening. And we'd already planned to do like a very immersive experience. So the whole product collection, instead of just being called Schitt's Creek, was called Rose Apothecary, as if they were actual products that were in the Rose Apothecary. And as you said, in our little village of Sharon Springs, which is 547 people, with, at the time, a very eccentric mayor. So it's very, very Schitt's Creek. We said, okay, let's completely skin our entire kindness shop, which is what we call our retail experience, and make it look like Rose Apothecary.
Not just the inside, we did the entire outside.
The entire thing. And we actually did scene by scene recreation of the scene where the two characters proposed to one another. And I sang the Tina Turner's.
Oh, I missed
Tina
that.
Turner part.
I've missed that clip. I will have to go a little bit deeper.
But what was so brilliant about that, and again, it came out of love. We had no idea it was going to be so huge, was that in our little town in Sharon Springs, which is about 3.5 hours north of the city, very snowy all winter long. Most of the shops on our little main street closed down for 3 months because there's no traffic. But that launched in January. And during the month of January and February, we had almost 20,000 people come from all over the world, as far away as Australia, to our little village of Sharon Springs.
They would come in character, they would perform scenes in the store.
And the little shops on Main Street, not just our shop, made enough money during that activation to help them survive the pandemic. So we will be forever grateful to Schitt's Creek and the way they were connecting with audiences and how they connect with our audience.
And then I'm sure the other shops will be forever thankful to you guys for having.
Well, it's all about neighbors,
Yeah.
But it is, to your point, when we find partners, it's not who, what's the hottest movie or the hottest TV show, or, it's what IP can we afford to license? It's who has the same values, who has the same mission, who is going to amplify our message, and who can we help amplify their message.
And with Wicked, I mean, of course, we love the Wicked musical, but our love for it came from the Wizard of Oz. And so we're like, yes, this idea of, there's no place like home, and you sometimes forget how important the people who raised you or were part of your early life, how important they are. So that was where we came to it from. But then, of course, we knew that Wicked was going to be a juggernaut. So if you looked at any of the kind of imagery and things that we created around that collaboration, yes, we had to utilize some of their IP. But as you said, we really leaned into Wizard of Oz. We dressed up as the Lollipop Guild.
Yeah.
The videos with the lederhosens and everything. Yeah.
That's great. Well, so you had sort of started as a lifestyle brand and still are one to some extent, but really, in the early days, you were selling food, you were doing more recipes, selling cheeses with, goat milk cheese. Can you talk a little bit about your decision to pivot into really focusing on beauty?
Mm-hmm. Well, when we first started the company, I had just been at Martha Stewart, so I really understood how the content was driving product creation and product sales. And so when we started the company, we're like, okay, we're going to be a less sophisticated, more rural version of Martha Stewart. And so that's how we started with our blog and everything back in the day when blogs were super important. And as Josh said, we had no money for marketing or even a publicist. And so we thought, okay, if we have these verticals, which beauty was always there because the soap was the first product, and then we had food, and we had garden, and then we had home. And we said, okay, every quarter, we're going to lean into one of the different verticals because that will help us have a story to pitch to press each quarter. But I think it is, and all of those things were successful. Nothing was ever as successful as the beauty vertical, but it's a story about leaning into and listening to your customer. Because once we launched on TV retail, and we did some food items on TV retail and things like that, but the customer was just most fascinated with the skincare and how we were doing the research on goat milk to treat people who have skin sensitivity. And so we just really listened to the customer and leaned into what they were telling us they wanted.
So when you made the decision to pivot into beauty, you also, I think around that time, worked with a branding company, Tether, I think it was, who kind of came and looked at your offices and met with your staff and we're trying to help you figure out your messaging going forward. And from what I read in the book, it was at that point that they kind of were at the offices and spoke to you all and saw what was going on and said, kindness is really your message, and that's what's at the center of your business. Have you thought about that in those terms before, or?
No, and it was actually a really tough thing. It's working in advertising for so many years to bring in and doing, rebrandings for so many big companies, corporation things, to bring in an outside company was, I thought, well, what are they going to know that I don't know? But I remembered what I used to tell my clients, and that saying was, nobody can describe the mountain they're standing on. And because, I'd work with clients, Delta and Nestle, and they were so wrapped up in their brand, they didn't really know what it meant to other people. And I never thought that would be true of us. But when this company came in, the way they came to kindness was they came in for our first meeting. Our team always actually bakes stuff when we have people come in, and we don't order from Panera's. And they actually bake food and bring it in. And we had plates that our artisans had made. And they were just overwhelmed by sort of the kindness that we were showing them and the stories that we tell. As Brent mentioned, we call all of our customers neighbors. We have a neighbor service department. We don't use the word customer. And they through the, I don't know, it's the first or second meeting, they turned and they said, you're not selling skincare, you're selling kindness. And we're like, man, damn, you're right. That is exactly what we're doing. And so it does take sometimes an outsider to come in and say, no, this is what you are, this is what you're doing. Which would help focus us so much.
It did. And it was so important because the reason we had brought them in was because, we had been a DTC company, and then we went on TV retail, which both of those scenarios give you so much freedom to tell your story in kind of long form. But we were getting ready to launch in Ulta, and we needed to crystallize as concisely as we could what this brand was about. And as you saw from the wonderful introductions you guys did, it's a lot of story.
Yeah.
There's a lot of story here. So how can you get everything down into as concise a point as possible? And kindness really encapsulates everything that led up to that point.
And it was so wonderful because often when I would do rebrandings in the past, then you'd have to go in and you'd have to have seminars for all the employees and tell them who they are now, and now you're this or that. And the minute we went to our team, we were like, you know what, kindness is our central theme, and they're like, yeah, all right, back to work. Yes, this is what we are. So
that's
true.
So you had always sort of been working in kindness sort of naturally into your everyday operations. Are there ways that now that it is a core value of the company, and perhaps the core value of the company, that you try to integrate it into your daily operations and some of your other programs?
Yes. Yeah. So early on, even after we had expanded in the early years up, 10 or 20 employees, we created what we called our kindness curriculum. And so it was kind of modeled after who's the hotel, St. Regis, who has like their manual on customer service.
We have with
Yeah.
yeah.
And so it's like, what can we teach our employees so that anybody who comes in will understand what we mean by kindness? And so we had this kind of HR manual around kindness. So every year, all the new employees would together and all the old employees would come together and take this course every year and refresh themselves on the course. And it became so beloved by our internal team that we ultimately turned that into a consumer-facing product. And people would come, again, from all over the country, with like 20 people would come for a full day immersion in our little town and take the kindness curriculum, spend some time on the farm and just contemplate kindness. And then when the pandemic hit, it made it more challenging to do that. And we had this AI company, back before anyone knew what AI was. There was this company called kindworks.ai, started by a gentleman from Oxford who had been researching AI for years. And they had developed this program that fits into your Slack or Outlook communication channels with your staff. And it sends out daily prompts that you can do amongst yourselves. And then it measures the impact of that kindness. Even down to the point that we can look to see if you are more engaged or you do more acts of kindness and you're in a sales position, you can actually tie higher revenue to people who perform more acts of kindness.
And I want to say that because a lot of times people hear like kindness is your marketing. They're like, oh, that's nice, happy clappy marketing. But kindness to us is competitive. I call it killer kindness. He doesn't like that. But it was our goal to prove that being kind is actually a strategic competitive advantage against other companies. So one of the things that we did was we funded research with kindness.org, who worked with Oxford University, Harvard University, and they created the first scientifically validated measure of kindness. So people can actually take this, people within organizations can take this quiz, quotient, the KQ, and get a score. And then, because if you can measure something, you can manage it, right? So we had different organizations from Nestle to Michigan State University, all to take the organization take these tests. So they had a kindness quotient score for their company. And it is our goal, it still is our goal, to prove that kinder companies, we all know that they have better retention and better corporate culture and all that, but actually perform better, bottom line perform better. So for us, it was like getting that number on kindness so it's a real thing. It's not just some soft marketing.
And our ultimate goal really with the company is to put as much kindness out into the world as possible. And with skincare, it is so easy to do because skincare is such a part of so many people's ritual, daily ritual. It's a very intimate act. And if we can remind people every morning as they're getting ready or every night before they're going to bed, how important kindness is, and we list kindness in our Inky list on our products, we know that that's going to have a profound impact on how they feel and then how that ripples forward into the world. And so, it's critical to us.
Yeah, and then we can put all the mean companies out of business.
And in fact, that KQ that research that we helped fund now with our influencer program, which is called the Kindness Crew. There are about 3,000 of them now, and they get rewarded, of course, for talking about product, but also for doing acts of kindness and posting about the acts of kindness that they do. And every single one of the ambassadors that come into our program have to take the kindness quotient and have to score a certain level on the kindness quotient in order to be considered to be part of our
And we look
program.
at, and that, most beauty companies, most companies, when they have their affiliate influencer programs, they look at, how many followers do you have? What's your engagement rate? So like all these numbers, and that's how you get admitted in the program. You have to take the kindness quotient. We evaluate the comments. We evaluate their communities and see how kind their communities are. And that's how you get into ours. And again, because I'm super competitive, we have gone from 90 rank of earned media value for all beauty companies. Now we're in the 30s, just within a year and a half, meaning that our influencer tribe is reaching more people than the others.
That's great. Well, I love killer kindness, but then you also, I think that's great to talk about. But then when you see some of the stories in their book, for instance, during the pandemic, there was a point where they sort of opened their customer service or neighbor service phone lines for people who were isolated and alone, who maybe did not need to order products, or maybe they couldn't even fulfill products at that time, but they kept the customer service lines open and said, you can call in and talk. We have people, here to chat with you. Don't you also offer like kindness coaching for your neighbors as well?
We do. And to your point about how we've instilled kindness into the company culture, it was actually one of our team members who came up with that idea. We had this shop on Main Street in Sharon Springs, and everything was shut down. You couldn't physically open the store. And rather than furlough those employees, we said, okay, our normal neighborhood services team who are answering customer issues, order issues, fulfillment issues, things like that, they're too busy to have long, drawn-out conversations with people. But we have 5 employees in this kindness shop that's not open. Let's create the phone bank there. And so those employees, if there was a customer who called in that didn't necessarily have an issue, or maybe neighbor services had already solved their issue, but the neighbor services could feel like they were alone or they just needed someone to talk to, then it was transferred over to the phone bank in the kindness shop. And those employees sometimes would stay on for 60 minutes talking to people just because there was someone who needed to hear somebody and have someone.
And because I'm somehow the numbers guy today, but the thing that we've learned, the people who come to visit the farm that came to during the pandemic, we opened the world's largest restaurant on the farm so that people could come socially distance and have dinner provided by our local restaurants. But and all these different things. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's nice to do, but it's a lot, you lose money. Our lifetime average customer value generally is $58, which is good for the beauty industry. Anybody who has come to the farm or has somehow touched Beekman beyond just the product is over 3 times their lifetime customer average. So just sitting on the phone and making somebody feel good means that they are going to buy more product in the long run.
Just to touch on the kindness coach, during the pandemic, we were, trying to think of all the different ways we could reach our audience. And we had started free consultations with our estheticians. So we had created a platform on the website where people could call in on Zoom, and our esthetician would listen to them, analyze their skin, make the product recommendations for them. And since we already had that platform in place, we said, oh, I wonder if we could have therapists do kindness coaching. And so we work with these 2 therapists who do kindness coaching. So now you can schedule a free 20-minute conversation with them where they will listen to what issues you have and say, okay, here are ways that you can incorporate more kindness into your life given your circumstances.
And kindness is different than just being nice, right? Because it's funny, we, as many people who work for Hearst magazines know or remember every year when it's time to do your self-evaluations, kindness is actually one of our 4 ways of working. So we all strive at Hearst to be versatile, collaborative, driven, and kind. And I think that when we've talked about this before too, sometimes the kind thing to do, and if you have an employee, is to give them some coaching so that they're be honest with them. And so I think that's an important thing that you kind of talk about as well, that it's not just being nice and being Pollyanna, it's kind of helping people grow and improve their lives.
Yeah, I mean, even when it comes down to the really tough things like terminating people, we've learned that, first of all, there's a kind way to separate from an employee, but it's also usually better if someone is not succeeding in the role they're in. It's not great for them and it's not great for you. So making that separation, and of course helping and making sure it's constructive, is the kind thing to do. The nice thing to do is just sort of shuffle them off for a while and then let them go without them ever really knowing why. So there's a very big difference, but we often, I put a pretty strongly messaged thing on LinkedIn, at the beginning of Pride Month, sort of going after companies who have pulled back on Pride. And I think people are sometimes shocked that I would put something that's striding out into the world, because that's not kind. Kind people are supposed to work together. But Pride is a perfect example. It is not nice to just sit back and take what's happening right now. It's not nice. The kind thing to do is to confront it, and teach people that what they're doing is not kind. It's not a good thing. And sometimes you have to not be nice to get your point across.
And I think right now don't you have a line of products that all of the proceeds are going to the Ali Forney Center, which New Yorkers probably know, but it's a center that, helps homeless or disadvantaged queer youth. And so, yeah, well, that kind of leads me into the next thing to talk about, which is the fact that for a lot of people, you were maybe the first gay people that they knew on TV. Your brand, unlike many beauty brands, which go for the coasts and go for, the elite market, and they're all about luxury, your brand really caters to everyone and really has a wholesomeness to it that I think appeals to a lot of people throughout the country, not just, the New York and LA crowd. So how has that been being on TV, being, you were an Out 100, honoree a few years ago. How has that sort of jived with having a customer base that is maybe not always believing the same things that you do?
Mm-hmm. We always say that we're middle America's gay best friends, because that we started in TV retail, QVC, HSN. Again, those are going to very conservative areas. Discovery Networks, who hosted our show, very conservative, Midwestern, and it was, for us, I loved it because I wrote for Out magazine for a long time. I was very politically active in the 90s, and then suddenly we switched into this stealth activism mode of like being this nice, wholesome gay couple coming into your living rooms, and the response we got from that was so amazing that I realized how powerful the changes we were making. We got so many letters from moms of young children who knew their son might be gay or their daughter might be gay, but they didn't know how to bring it up because there was nobody in their environment where they were living that was gay, but they didn't know how to bring it up. And they said they would just sit down and watch our show, not talk about it. We didn't talk about being gay on our show, we just were.
Yeah.
And it was, for me, it was much more powerful than, I shouldn't say that because I believe in all sorts of activism, but it was a different kind of activism than I was used to, and it was rewarding for me.
That just surfaced a memory for me because I remember during the Fabulous Beekman Award days, we were asked to be the grand marshals at the July 4th parade.
Oh God!
In the town over from us.
Okay.
And again, upstate New York.
Our county voted 84%.
Yes.
For Trump.
It's very conservative.
Contextually.
Super conservative. And so we said, oh.
Okay, and we did a viral video in the show. I did this silly video about model walking, where I did this like silly model walking. I'll just say it's very gay, and it took off virally, and it was
the drag and Beekman Venn diagram moment.
Yes.
Well, the producers of our show were also the producers of RuPaul's Drag Race, so there really was.
Yes.
Yes, the World of Wonder that we all know and love now. This was like one of their early shows.
Yeah. And one of the women in Cobblestone, who's in charge of this 4th of July parade, said, "Would you host the world's largest model walk down the center of Cobblestone in our county?" I was like, "Oh God, I'm gonna get shot! Like literally, I'm gonna get shot." And it was so amazing. It was a TV moment. Like the amount of people that just fell in behind doing the gayest walk you could do all the way down the Main Street.
Farmers,
Yeah.
like people you wouldn't expect. And what was wonderful about this woman was that she had bought like all of these like inexpensive feather boas, off of Amazon, and like handed them out to the people who were marching. And as we walked down Main Street, we pulled the spectators in. Said, oh no, you can be part of the parade as well. But the memory that surfaced for me when you're talking about, the parents having a conversation with the kids. Do you remember that little kid? He was probably 7 years old, and he came up to us after the parade, and I remember because he had his fingernails painted, and he had made himself a T-shirt, and it said, "I'm fabulous too." A 7-year-old kid. In rural upstate New York. And do you remember that?
Yeah, Bond kid.
Yeah.
So that to me, it was totally different than my days, like marching for Matthew Shepard and, getting arrested. And that was powerful in its own way, but this to me felt really impactful.
Well, it's my visibility.
And it was scary. Yeah.
I think, that is one of the things I think you mentioned in the book, or maybe in one of the other books that you've written, but just showing like queer joy just kind of everyday life is sometimes the most subversive thing you can do is just to
Yeah.
show that like, oh,
We're just like you.
we're just like you, including that maybe we bicker sometimes or we have struggles running a business while also being partners. So that's another question. What is it like, since 2008, your entire lives have been intertwined at home, at work? How do you make that work?
Well, I will say we had to be one of the most pandemic-ready couples on the face of the earth, because since that time we have lived and worked together 24/7. Like,
Yeah.
so
And yeah, it's tough to build a business while you're in a relationship, while you're under financial pressure.
because it never stops. It's not like you go to work and you come home and over dinner, you're like, how was your day?
Yeah.
I know exactly how his day was.
I think the one thing that we learned, we call it the 51% rule.
Mm.
And that is, and this more applies to our business, but it can apply to anything in life. I think any partnership. 51%. Most times you talk to couples who are partners who are working together in business, it's like, well, I do the creative, they do the financial, I do this, they do that. We're both creative, we're both business oriented. So what our distinction is, whoever is most passionate about an issue gets that extra 1%. So the other person is obligated to fight for their 49% voice. And you can argue and we can go at it, but it's always, we always just somehow instinctively know, like, this is really, really important to him. So I hate it, but I'm going to let him be wrong so I can say, I told you so later.
Well, and I think that's one of the fun things. If you all want to go back to Amazon Prime or Apple TV and check out the fabulous Beekman boys, I think that was one of the most interesting things about the show, is that although in, maybe in your magazine later or on your website, you were trying to present a beautiful Martha Stewart version of life, that show was really like the behind the scenes of like the fighting and the ups and downs and the crying and
It was behind the scenes before behind the scenes became an
right.
Because for so many years, that's all you saw was the end product,
Right.
the perfected product.
Wait, so all your photo shoots for Veranda aren't?
There's no chaos or
You
anything.
don't just
there's
walk in
plenty
and
of chaos.
That's what people
but no
wanna
one sees
see.
it.
Yeah, that's what they want to see now. Yeah, and in fact, I remember one time early on, I think we were probably one of the first businesses to have a business page on Facebook, because around the time that we were starting, Facebook was still like high school friends and college friends and things like that. And I remember the post early on that got the highest amount of engagement. I don't even think they called it engagement then.
Yeah.
Highest amount of comments was a photo that we had done of our pantry, which was a disaster, as most people's pantries are, unless you're Martha. And we said, oh, look, we're just like everybody else. Our pantry's a mess.
Like, it's time to clean the pantry.
People loved that.
Loved it.
People loved the fact that you were showing life is not this perfect magazine layout. They like to look at a perfect magazine layout and dream about it, but they also like to know, okay, that's something to aspire to. That's not how real life is.
I agree. I think, yeah, when you can, sometimes in the picture you want beautiful, but I think when you can show that vulnerability as well in the behind the scenes, or especially in essays and things of that nature, if you can show the vulnerability, that's what really lets people have an emotional relationship with you. Well, let's talk a little bit, speaking of writing, you've written memoirs, cookbooks, even a style book, but this is your first business book that is launching July 1st, and it is published through Harvard Business Review. The book is called Goat Wisdom: How to Build a Truly Great Business. Goat as in greatest of all time, wisdom. But it's filled with 12 principles you learned from your families, kind of growing up in rural communities. And these range from many hands make light work to, love thy neighbor. What do you have a principle that is sort of your favorite?
Well, it would have to be love thy neighbor, because that's so critical. And that was from the very beginning, not only from Farmer John, but when we got our first big order of soap, which was from Anthropology. They ordered 52,000 bars of soap, and it was the two of us and soap maker Deb, and we were a 3-person company at that time. And we timed ourselves out, and we were hand wrapping every bar of soap, hand tying it like it was like Anthropology.
Yeah.
And we timed ourselves out, and we said, even if we worked 24 hours a day for the next 6 weeks straight. There is literally not enough minutes for us to complete this order. And because we had started our company on our website, DTC, we were very familiar with the local postal clerk,
Yeah.
Maria. And I went to her and I said, Maria, we're in a bind. Do you know any neighborhood people, wives, retirees, anybody who have free time on their hands? And if so, would you invite them over to Beekman to help us wrap bars of soap? And she did. And mind you, at this point in time, we were still basically destitute. It was pre the Amazing Race. We still had this huge mortgage on the farm we couldn't get out from underneath, trying to start this company. And neighbors answered the call. And for like 3 weeks straight, we had people in our hallway, in our dining room, working 24 hours a day, wrapping these bars of soap. And they did it, at least I think initially because they were curious. And then it became like this camaraderie, like we're in this together as a community and we're going to make this happen. And it just goes to show, like when you reach out to people around you, if you can give them a cause to get around, they will respond to the cause.
Yeah.
And it always happens. And so I think love thy neighbor is the most important to us. But when we started contemplating the idea of the book, I think we saw several things happening kind of culturally. One was, we think that there's been an entire generation of people raised on Shark Tank, which we think is not the appropriate way to think about doing a business.
We like the show, but
Yeah, we love the show. And
It's one way to do it, but it's not the only way to do
right.
it too.
Well,
Yeah.
it's the right way to do it in certain circumstances, but to the average viewer, they're not looking at, oh, is this a specific circumstance where this applies to me?
Right.
And then it became this universal idea. Oh, I need to come up with an idea and get people to invest in it. And so often what happens when you set yourself up for failure by thinking that way, and then you also don't set a good foundation for the business. So
and then your business also becomes, in Silicon Valley is really what started this. Your business doesn't become your idea. Your business becomes getting the next round of funding. And so we'd been asked for years, like, oh, how do you start your business? What's your story? And people like the story, our founder story. And we were like, we did business the old fashioned way. So, in our book, there's 12 different maxims, everything from, an empty vessel makes the most noise to you can lead a horse to water, make a drink. But what we've done is apply all this wisdom throughout the ages, apply it to today's business, because there's this whole industry about entrepreneurship and starting businesses, and even like management when you're in a corporation, there's this whole industry around the secrets to success or the magic things that you don't know
the
about.
easy ways.
Here's the one thing you're not doing that will get, that will make you $1 million. And there is no secret. It's all the same sayings that your grandparents knew, that parents knew, that you know in your heart. These are the things that will make you a success. Sometimes you have to learn how they apply to your circumstances, which is what we've tried to do, and how these maxims that we believe in apply to our business. But we really wanted to do it to counter this idea that, there's all this, that you have to become Elon Musk or you have to become whoever. You can just build a really great business with the skills you already have and the knowledge you already know.
And you can do it from Main Street, because I think, as Josh just pointed out, with like Elon and all these tech billionaires, so often now on social media, they're the only measures of success that you see. Like, you're not seeing the Main Street millionaire or the
Right.
plumber who became a millionaire. And we're like, we want to do something that can highlight how you grow these businesses on Main Street and still have a really phenomenal business that can set you up for life.
Right.
And so that's, the idea behind this book is for those people who maybe they're certainly probably not going to get an MBA. Maybe they're not even going to go to college. But guess what? You can still, with the knowledge that you have already been given in your life, set the foundations for a really phenomenal
You
business.
can just be a former drag queen.
Yeah. You can still do it. Which
You don't need to be
interestingly-
a doctor or have your MBA. I mean,
Which interestingly,
anybody can do that.
because we have this kind of, I think, populist approach to how we think about things.
Yeah.
When we were working with our agent, we said, okay, we will only do this book if we can get Harvard Business Review interested in doing the book. because we wanted that juxtaposition of this authority who writes all those books on management for like a rarefied type of
Right.
reader. We wanted to make the point, you know what? Even Harvard Business Review thinks that this is true, that you can, with the knowledge that you have, build a great business from your dining room table.
Yeah.
And they did, and that's how it came out.
Well, it's funny too, because I've talked about this before in my book that came out at the end of last year.
Which
but-
is great. Can I tell you? I have read it, and everybody in this room should read it. It really is so well done.
Well, many people got a copy of it if they came to the last Hearst Pride
There are
event.
less words not highlighted in your book.
I'm still like a read it and highlight with a marker. Yeah.
I'm the same way. So the one thing I say is, you talk about business lessons and leadership lessons, but it used to be that, either you're, entrepreneur or you work for a corporation. And I think these days, as we all know, even if you're working for a major corporation, you're expected and encouraged to be entrepreneurial. So my question is, what advice would you give to someone who's like sitting in this audience, either with a dream to start their own business, or maybe they just want to like really break some barriers in their career and really end up leading Hearst, leading another business that's already established?
Mm-hmm. Well, I say whatever type of career you're going to do, entrepreneur, corporate route, first know what your personal metric of success is going to look like. Because if you don't know that up front, and of course people can evolve and sometimes things change, but know, okay, I'm someone and my goal is to get to $1 million, or my goal is to do X, Y, Z. Know that from the very beginning, because it makes it so much easier if you have the goal that you're working toward in sight. So that's the first thing I would tell people. The second thing I would say is try to identify two things. One, what you're passionate about, and second, what your skill sets are. Because as we all know, we may or may not have Social Security in 20 years. We may all be working until we're 80 because we're going to be healthier and we're going to be expected to work longer. So if you know what you're passionate about, you're going to have the drive and the energy to keep working until you're 80. So identify now what you really are passionate about. Maybe there are several things. You're going to have several different eras in your life, but understand what those passions are because that's going to make work life easier. And if you're trying to achieve work-life balance, if you're doing something you're passionate about, it's going to help you achieve work-life balance. And then the second thing is, know what your skill sets and your weaknesses are, and identify how those skill sets are going to help you turn that passion into a business. And if you have weaknesses, know either how you need to educate yourself to overcome those weaknesses or hire appropriately to supplement those weaknesses. And it's that simple.
Yeah,
It's that simple.
I remember asking you all that prior to this, how did you build this company? And I remember you saying every time we hit a roadblock where we were going to grow to the next level, we hired someone who maybe knew something that we didn't or was able to help take us there. So I think that's important.
Yes, I forget who said it now, but this is a great quote. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And that's how we always think about it. Like,
because you're not the CEO of your company.
we have never been CEO. We have never given ourselves a CEO title in the entire, even then when there were 3 people, we weren't CEOs.
So you guys always make it look easy, but have there been points where you've really had like imposter syndrome or some like severe self-doubt along the journey as entrepreneurs?
Anytime I'm in the room with Martha,
Honestly, well, everybody who's in the room with
Honestly,
Martha.
I mean, yeah, I'm really not that. Yeah, I don't.
Well, there's that great Obama quote. To your point, yes, I have always, from my days in advertising, I've always felt imposter syndrome. But as we've grown and become more successful and been in bigger and bigger rooms, that becomes less. What's the Obama quote that's so good? You did a video.
Oh yes, there's a great thing on Instagram where Obama's saying, I always thought when I got to the Senate, I'd be surrounded, everybody would be so smart. Or when I got to president, I was with heads of state. And he's like, no, there are plenty of idiots who are heads of state. and that's true. And I think as you move up and you're meeting with huge organizations and whatnot, you probably have been in rooms with people and you're like, that person is in that position? Like that does and so I always say you shouldn't have imposter syndrome. because everybody feels like they have.
Right.
You didn't just magically appear in the room that you're in. You're there. You are in that room because you were invited in.
But I will say, and I think, because of my training as a physician, physicians are trained to be overconfident anyway, because you kind of make life or death decisions in a small amount of time. So
A little bit of a God
a little bit of
complex.
confidence. So by my training, I am maybe overly confident, but I will say that I still am in awe of influencers who can just turn on the camera and start talking to the camera, and it just seems so natural, and they just automatically assume everyone is riveted by their every word. And now people are calling it the cringe effect, and you have to embrace the cringe. And every time we turn this thing on, it is embracing the cringe. To see yourself and like you're talking to the camera, it's a skill.
Yeah, it is, and it's
And that's when I feel like an imposter. Anytime I have to do something. Imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Yes, you are an imposter.
You are
well.
correct.
On that note, we have just a few minutes left, so I wanted to see if anyone in the audience had any questions. Oh, someone's got their hand up.
I'm obsessed with your company. I'm obsessed with you too. I apologize. I got in late. So if you already talked about this, I apologize. But I'm watched every episode of Every Amazing Race. Did you talk about this already?
No, not in
No.
detail.
All right,
Go
so
ahead, your question.
just
Amazing Race
give me
questions are-
like, I don't know, what's one thing a viewer should know, or what's one thing you learned from that experience that you still remember? They won, in case anybody missed this. They were amazing.
And we're underdogs the entire
Amazing.
season.
We
It's
won by
so-
not losing.
Yeah.
Yes, we were consistently second to last throughout the entire season.
Which that is a lesson for everybody. You can win by not losing. You do
Yes.
not have to be.
Slow and steady
Yeah,
wins the race.
that's
We'll
right.
put it in
Refuse
here.
to lose. Yes. The Amazing Race. This is what I think people don't know about the Amazing Race. First of all, it is 100% real. There are two types of reality shows: ones that have juries and ones that are luck, fate, or chance. These are legal terms. So the Amazing Race is actually a game show. If a show has a jury, the producers can interfere. If the show is based on luck, fate, or chance, it's considered a game show and they cannot interfere. So the Amazing Race is 100% real. And it's 100% terrifying.
And they run the whole thing in 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
So you can imagine that you are circumnavigating the globe. We went to 9 countries in our season, I think.
Mhm.
And if you just fly from here to Europe, you're tired, like you're wiped out for a day.
That's the worst part of it.
Yeah.
It's not the challenges. I'm like, yeah, I can fall off a cliff. CBS isn't gonna let me die. So like that's part, those are the easy things. The hard part is the sleeping on the floor of the Frankfurt airport. You don't have any money. You do have to scrounge for food. We were eating food that people left behind in the airports on their tables. So we were eating that food. So it was the in-between parts that are the really, really horrible bits. Especially, we were already in our mid-40s when we were running that. And we sort of knew going in, I would say, like, we knew that we were the middle-aged gay team that's supposed to like go in and be a little bit campy and make some jokes and then get out by episode 5 so that the all-American team.
So the
can win.
athletes could win.
Exactly. And so we honestly did not think we would make it that far, and I did not pace myself. So by the end, I was really hurting.
There was one moment on the map, maybe 3/4 of the way through. And so usually, you get to the finish line and Phil is there and he's like doing a little interview with you on the finish line. And he had done his little interview. And then Bertram Van Munster, who's the creator of Amazing Race, he was off to the side. And after Phil finished his formal interview, Bertram came up, this was off camera, and he's like, "Why are you guys still here?" Like he could not believe that we
He was
had hung on.
flummoxed.
Yeah, he was. He
But
was.
that's the life lesson. So like we hung on as best we could to the very end. Then it was, of course, 3 teams in the finale. It was a University of Texas football player and his cheerleader girlfriend, all-American team, 2 Chippendale dancers, did the whole race with their shirt off, and the 2 of us. And the very final challenge was a thing at the United Nations where I had to raise flags, and it was supposed to be a memory challenge, but it was a math process of elimination challenge. And it's just not that hard to be better at math than Chippendale dancers than cheerleaders.
I don't like that joke because I bet there are a lot of Chippendale dancers super smart. But I will say that I did think that we had a chance because when we got off the airplane, and they always give these kind of clues, they're a little bit obtuse. And so when we got off the airplane in New York City, the clue that they had given us was a luggage tag that had the emblem of the United Nations, you know, that globe, the flattened globe. And I heard the contestant, one of the other contestants say, "Oh, we have to find Target." And I'm like, okay, I think we can do this.
You had the hometown advantage
Yeah.
in being in New York City.
And we knew there wasn't a Target in New York City.
You're gonna be heading to Brooklyn now. Any other questions? Amazing Race or otherwise?
There was one online from Stephanie, and she asked, how did you come up with the name Beekman 1802?
Oh, thank you for asking this. Well,
That actually came from Martha, a lesson from Martha
it was.
too,
Mhm.
was when we started the company, we said we don't want to name it after ourselves because a company is only, you know, if anything goes wrong, I don't know if you go to jail for insider trading or something, it could
Right.
really affect your stock price. So we were like, we're not going to name it after us. And what we did was we sat down, we listed all the brands we could think of, premium brands that have been around for ages. And one of them was Chanel No. 5. And we're like, okay, name, number. And Beekman was the name. William Beekman built our farm in 1802. Beekman 1802.
Any other questions? I think if there are no more, we are at time. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you,
me.
Victor.
Thank
They are
you.
the most fun people. I'm so glad that you guys got to experience some of the Beekman joy.
Thank you, everyone.
kindness.
And read Victor's book. It's great.